Whew. I think that's finally got it all. Alright then. Good evening, everyone. Well, the servers are generally full, and there's a lot to think about in terms of the mess that causes for our lounge and for overall things. But we did mention that we had some other content to look at this week, or in the upcoming week, and this week's therefore the time it will get done. Dragon Ball FighterZ has updated its training dummy settings and capacity, meaning that we are now able to expand our bot content potentially into this game. Now, as for what exactly that means, I've been doing a little testing before stream to confirm some basic assumptions about it. And here is what we know so far. First of all, I'll just show off the 2 recording slots I have here and some of the stuff to help you understand it if you want to set up your own in a similar way, even if you don't intend to use our eventual stuff or just want to experiment to help us out. We know that the slots are shared. It tells you which character you did it for, but it doesn't actually care when you replay it whether or not that character is on the screen or not. So, for example, if I start the replay, Goku will punch, and I can input the same sort of edge shifts that allow Goku to do his moves as I've always done. He's a little bit slow relative to a particular thing, but as you can see, I can definitely get him to do this, even though I actually only put in a quarter circle back and a medium button in these 2 different slots. He can hit that medium button multiple times, though he doesn't seem to be doing that in a way that matters. Or he can do that. So our edge shifting technique definitely still works, though the actual way that you do the recording is a little bit different because you can't use the standard methods for starting and stopping the recordings. But it shouldn't be too unbearable. And since we always suggest that people change around the way they do this anyway, it's no big deal. So, from there, where do we go? First of all, as intended to demonstrate, it doesn't actually care if Goku is on screen. The fact they're all named Goku is really not relevant. He'll keep on doing this, and that means that our bots all have the capacity to share their slots, which is useful in a game like Dragon Ball FighterZ, where they actually have specifically simple inputs. For us, that means overall that we could create bots using the 8 slots, but we wouldn't be able to create separate ones without you having to re-enter things. That's a limitation, but not a super hard one to move past. There are ways to do it, and I'm already starting to think about some of them at least. So, let's throw him out and get Kakarot back on. We have decided to call this iteration Kakarot. Same thing happens here. The delays in it make it relatively easy to get something useful out of this. But we don't seem to have a control at the moment over the delay section of it. Therefore, our goal now is to come up with something that covers most of the things that people learning Dragon Ball FighterZ would need to understand. The most simple possible method would be to just give one input quarter circle, one input quarter back, and a bunch of buttons and see what the bots come up with. But we can do a little better than that at least. So let's go into a little bit of how to actually record anything useful using this and our usual edge shift techniques. I'm skipping over just the idea of using these things as a generality and going straight to how do I shift this to actually work in a useful way. So let's record slot 3, and for this you have to actually go to slot 3. Note that if you turn off repeat randomly, it will just play one and stop, and you have to press the recording start to start it every time. But what this is set to at the moment doesn't actually matter. We're going to leave it on repeat randomly for the sake of it and hit resume here. So I've set, in my case, the touchpad to start the recording. Note that the recording does not start immediately. It stands by, lets you know how much time you have available. And the other important thing is that your recording time is shared across all recordings. This is still a fairly long time you have, but this is actually fairly important for our bot style stuff. And so far there doesn't seem to be a way to save multiple recordings per character other than this, so it keeps things in the simplest form. So let's try a relatively difficult thing, edge shifting it so that I'm hitting 2 buttons at once. With this on, if I start the recording again, we should get quarter back with those, and eventually it should do the actual Dragon Rush. This is useful because the Dragon Rush input is a Dragon Rush input and a super input. So we have a good start there already. If I can edge shift it quickly enough, I can make sure that I have a quarter circle back with this in it. And since we don't want the Dragon Rush to be all of that common anyway, and we also don't want supers to be all that common, we can move on to the next part of this. It allows you to change how often something plays. So let's reduce this to, let's use ratios in this case, and reduce this to 25%. Let's assume it's 25%. It's not actually a percentage, probably you might have to do some adding, but overall, we restart our recording, and it supposedly will play randomly and do that less than the others. So we're good overall. Now we also know that generally, while a super is going on, we don't actually care about what other buttons are being pressed. For most characters, this is fine, you just leave it. When Dragon Rush is going on, we do care a little bit. So, we have one input that basically says, Whenever I do this input, you get to wait a certain amount of time before you care about what I hit next. And what I hit next is almost always the same or irrelevant. Okay, we can work with this. This means that we can decide to specifically to give this input extra inputs specifically to get certain things. So rather than leave it at that, let's try making it a little different. We're going to do it as a Dragon Rush, which is good. It's not going to bother us to do that. The hard part is actually getting the initial recording to have the edge shift as I mentioned. But let's go with this. We're going to go tap light 3 times, pause and wait till he's in the air, tap light twice. And of course I ended the recording incorrectly. This is the other problem. If your muscle memory for ending recordings comes from Street Fighter or Robots, you have a little ways to go when it comes to getting these ones to work. So, we should now have something. And Goku shouldn't care about any of those inputs while he's in his super. But we've now given him his auto combo. Because if he is doing anything that eats the first input of that, just as normal, he will actually just do the auto combo instead. Plus we gave him a little pause, which means that he will still do the auto combo just normally. He has a separate one, basically, at the end, that he'll just do on his own. The problem with this input right now is that I appear to have plinked it, so we're not going to get the super, so we'll have to try again. But the structure... No, there's a Dragon Rush. It claims to be random, but it is not actually doing that very well. Either that or it tried to do the move as an EX and failed. But one way or another we can test it out by fixing the input, hopefully. So stand by, and we're going to try this without a blink. You could probably just set a button to do this and do it easier than I've been doing it, but... I'm being stubborn about it for a little bit, because it helps us understand what can go wrong with it as well. So, if we try this now, was I quick enough to get a quarter circle back into... Yes, we did. So we now have Bat Super as well as auto combo. And down smash if it plays a certain way, and it will probably end in such a way where I can get it to not do the down smash and have another option. Now, what other multi-inputs do we know? We know that if I record slot 4, this is Super Dash. Do I want Super Dash that much? Well, it's also the input for various supers, so maybe I care. So, Vanish is not a specifically useful input in that way. Vanish just gives me ES moves. Might be useful. And it is something we're probably going to have to put in at some point. What that would probably let us do is use this instead of heavy in normal situations, if we expect the move to be important. In short, if you do specials with the vanish combination, you won't get a vanish, you will actually get the move. We might be able to use that for something. But for now, we're going to go with the super dash, which has a decent amount of purposes. So what does a super dash normally contain? Nothing in particular. It's just a super dash. I could put other things in it, and this is one of our main tactics in bots, to put other inputs within something. But me hitting any other button combinations during a super dash doesn't do anything. We don't care about it. We might care because if a super dash is really far away, it takes a little longer to reach the opponent. Meaning that we have potential for things like brawly mix-ups where you keep on inputting different things such that when the opponent is expecting you and is ready to block that super dash, they do different things than if they were on the ground. We'll see what we can come up with for later, probably. We're going to basically save that input for characters who have super dash mix-ups, who have things they can easily do from their super dash that matter a lot. But we're going to check out what the Bachelor actually has as moves. That is our current name for this character. Because really, it really is too complicated to be calling him Base Vegeta. And in short, even though the Bachelor is actually about the same, you still don't want to like have people mishear you or anything. So until the community comes up with something better, that's what we're calling him. Because he doesn't have a wife yet. And we're therefore... Anyway. This looks like a decent mix-up out of things. But he'd do that on his own. Still useful in a way. Now note that a lot of things come out of the very end of a super dash. But since most characters can't actually stop it that much, they don't care. So, we actually have that option. We can do the maximum range super dash and throw in a bunch of things in here. And we're not going to do it now. But it is something you can bear in mind. So for now, let's just throw in something. Maybe a medium auto combo. So we're at standing by now. Super dash, mash medium, and then probably quarter circle back and something. Or just hit special a lot, or something. And as usual, as I said, I ended recording incorrectly. So stand by, move to space. And we restart this one. Who knows? We'll see if we got something good out of it. Ugh, I'm gonna take forever to get used to that. Stand by. And that's 2 super dashes. Stand by. You get the idea. If you're actually used to doing the recordings themselves, it shouldn't be too hard to keep it up. So let's assume we got something. When you make a new recording, it automatically gets set to that amount. So we're going to lower this one also to 30 in this case and see if we can figure out somehow what that means. And we resume. Now, the other thing is that if you wanted to test just single combinations, you'd obviously have to do the entire tweaking. There doesn't seem to be a way to quickly turn them on and off so that X is or is not working. If you set them to repeat randomly, which is what we need for this, there's no way to make sure it will work that properly. So we're just going to leave them for a little bit and see if we eventually get that I got the edge shift correct and we still have the chance of getting the other version of this. Oh, and there we go. It's functionally the same move, so it doesn't really matter to us. We would need a quarter circle forward in order to get anything useful. But you can see we've still gotten some stuff in here. And the main reason he'll keep on doing supers isn't because it's a high frequency, but rather that I haven't put in anything else that is edge shifted to just start like that, which means we're going to need those. Blatantly going to need those. Alright then, moving on. If we consider from there, well, what do I need you to do to just do normal moves? Well, obviously I should hit the normal move button. And for Goku, let's treat that as his special button, because that should give us Kamehameha. What else does he do with this? Well, there's some hard parts involved here based on the recording method, as mentioned before. Okay, apparently you can do that now. Good stuff. Button settings. So, we're used to being able to start and stop recordings with the options button. And that is not going to work here. What we need now is a record training dummy button that is not being used for something else, but could be easily pressed while either holding other buttons or doing something else in general. So, since the position on this is approximately the same as triangle, and we often hit triangle while trying to end or start recordings, while doing this, it may be necessary to do that. You can try other buttons, but the good thing is that heavies are normally not mashed in a way that matter, so you could get used to hitting heavy buttons on, let's say, L2 if you don't normally use it, or whatever is in your triangle. Normally move to L2, hope for it, change things around until you're happy. But for us, we're going to treat this as that, and in the config I normally use, this is normally my heavy button. So if you see me mess things up, that's probably why. Which means that my heavy button is now on my touchpad, which I don't want, so let's change it to L2 and hope that that didn't wreck anything anywhere. Sparking? Sparking. Yeah, sure, I'll leave sparking there. And of course, since you also need something to play the dummy with, you can leave that on R3 because starting and stopping the dummy is not something you're really concerned about. But you need both hands free to immediately start stuff for the others. So, the first thing we have to do from here is try to give some form of attack moving in normally. Let's try medium for now. And let's use this experiment to figure out what happens if I try to hit record and medium at the same time, which in this case is hitting square and triangle at the exact same time. What exactly will the recording try to do? Now obviously I would have to turn them all off to get just that one, so I don't want to use that one. I want to use circle instead. So I'm in standby. And hopefully that gave me something. So I know that we've got some quarter circles in here. We got some special buttons that won't make any difference whatsoever. Let it rock. I have no idea if that was what his special button is. Apparently yes. So, I would have thought that was a beam. So now we have quarter circle back and special as an option for the bot. And apparently if I hit those two buttons at what the game considers the same time, it will in fact record it perfectly like that. This probably means that our edge shifts in this game are a little bit easier because we should be able to hold a direction before that. But for the sake of clarity, let's check. We're going to re-record the one we have. So we're stopping the recording using triangle, holding down from the standby position, and we're going to try hitting that and then, well, down back actually. And we're going to hit S twice and then hit triangle again. So it seems that it treats it as the first frame is correct. Now, what normally happens in this case in our Street Fighter bots is that that S will still count as being in the right timing. Which means somewhere in here we should be able to get a quarter circle into down back special and it will still do the same move. But again, it's not easy to test it. I can go tweak all the buttons, but it's easy to just wait and watch and hope he eventually does it. The more you add, however, the longer it's going to take to do this sort of test. So there's probably going to be some suggestions as to how to make sure this is easiest in terms of making sure you got each one correct. But again, for us, we're just going to wait a little bit while I talk about it. Obviously, the inputs with supers and so on... Oh, there it is. So let's give him a quarter circle forward then, because obviously that is going to be important for a ton of things. And we also know that I can be holding the direction from the beginning. In other games, when you're doing this, it doesn't actually do anything because you have a setup. So holding down back, I'm just going to do a quarter circle forward and I'm going to hit it directly as if it's a normal attack and see if I get it. That was probably too much. Down back. You can tell I'm a Chun-Li player. Standing by. So now, once again, we give it a shot and see where he manages to get things. We only care about seeing if the quarter circle forward is actually in here, and since it's relatively easy to test, is that working with other stuff? We'll just watch again for a little bit. And that's the back. Fortunately, as we make the quarter circles less and less frequent, we'll see less and less of other things. But it doesn't look like I ended up with a quarter circle. Whether that's my bad execution, probably, or a delay that happens between the lag of the hands is a little different and difficult to figure out. But I really didn't have to do that the way I did. I didn't have to try to do the first part of that as quickly as I did. So let's go with that instead. And note that it's difficult to see because as soon as you finish the recording, your inputs disappear. So you're going to have to do a lot more testing to make sure you got things right than you have to do for Street Fighter bots. But let it rock. I could take away his meter to solve some of this problem, but it looks like we have a quarter circle forward or something close to one. Yes, we have something close to one. And it does care that I was holding down back, but that doesn't really matter for what I'm doing here. So, we still have the same overall effect. So let's try to resolve this differently and see what happens if it's no longer this version of Goku. Let's swap in... I have no idea actually. That didn't help at all. What do we have? And we have standard Goku. Okay, no problem. The simplistic inputs help make this process much easier in terms of the amount of storage you need. So we're not so worried about that right now. We're worried about all of the base principles that take up the spaces. There should be some dashes, some back dashes, some back jumps. All of those things are required to have a bot generally work. And we might need to try to get them in. But for moves, moves are generally going to be the easy part of this. They'll just randomly do moves, and so be it. This one's much heavier on the where do I hide things than our Street Fighter bots. Even though our Street Fighter bots tend to have a lot of that in them, this has to be thought through more because, again, every character has to share this. And for example, we haven't actually seen him go straight for Super Dash in a while, probably because it's the beginning of something, and therefore hidden too well. He'll tend to be doing something else. So there's some tweaking that will probably need to happen. And in fact, we want, from the look of it, to sort of minimize the number of things we do with directions, because it's like that. But let's at least try to give him some dashes. We have 3 inputs left. We're going to be really boring about it and put forward jump, back jump, forward dash, those things all in one place. Another good option would be to put them in the super dash input, but we're just messing around for now. So, since dashes don't generally follow anything, but jumps can, we should think about how can we get a jump in that actually matters in that case. Well, we know that crouch medium into jump is a jump cancel for most characters, and most of us can do that jump cancel for most of what we need. So, let's try to give them the jump cancel outright in slot 6. I don't even remember how good Goku's is. So at this point I want to hit the recording start, crouch medium, up forward, and end the recording. And I have no idea. So we're bringing it now to the point where you actually have to start messing with the recording playbacks in order to test things. And so far we haven't found a way to make it so that these are properly set. So let's try the next experiment. Raise this to 100 and see what happens. Will it really just play that input every time? We do have the useful 100 to 0, which turns things off. So that means we could have something useful out of it if a certain thing works a certain way. I'll get back to that shortly. Hold it down a little bit, Goku. Do we even see it? We see something. Although it looks like I may have not gotten the medium somehow. Interesting. But all sorts of things can go wrong with these recordings, so let's give it another shot. Can you even jump cancel this? I'm terrible at jump cancels, honestly, but it could be that he really can't. Because he's a weirdo. There we go. Different characters have different ones, and I often forget the fact that you can't always do it straight off that. So, let's try from there. Crouch medium, stand medium, up forward. And I'm not going to hit the last light at all. So, standing by to... Nope. Now, I'm not sure how well that worked. In fact, I'm just willing to do that again because I'm pretty sure it didn't work well. But the idea is fairly clear. Do I just let go of that really late? There we go. And that's too slow. And this time, I got myself to hit triangle and then stop the recording. Good stuff, probably. So our 100% is not apparently all that helpful. Or it doesn't consider that I made the recording at all. Let's check which of those things it is. No, it seems to think I did slot 6. So I guess we wait on it. But as mentioned, for some reason it's not really happy about the buttons part. Oh no, they're there. I think. This sort of thing is always growing pains, so you're gonna have to try whatever you can. And hope for the best in a lot of cases. But we do know, so far, that 100 is either additive or not meaningful, as he doesn't seem to be consistently doing that one. So let's try playing with these numbers somewhat. And the obvious answer is to reduce them all to 0. The fact that it rolls over is probably going to be less useful when it comes to this, but you can tweak once you get near enough. Again, the game does not care who you make these recordings on, it will just play them back regardless of anything else. So if I restart this now, that is not what I meant to do at all. Fortunately, you can cancel it and just have it start. You seem to think that I did not hit any of the attacks in this. Interesting. Okay. Well then, so we go again. And we replay it. So this is not as useful because unless you're close, it doesn't really help. And he tends to do a lot of this sort of thing. But overall, it's random in a useful way. So let's turn on something that might actually help with the jump cancel. And see what it thinks of 100 and 240s. Let it go, Goku. Now obviously you actually have to have the skill to do jump cancel timings in order to make this make any sense. And it would have to play them correctly. Fortunately, it's likely that anything to do with... Come on, start hitting the lights now. Aw. I did turn them on, right? But we are now seeing possibly the effect of the 100%, and possibly just the effect of me being terrible at doing the second part of a jump cancel. But we do have something, and that something can probably be fixed or tweaked. And if you are used to doing it, just set up the buttons to whatever your character is used to doing and you'll get something useful. But in terms of tweaking the numbers, this is going to be way harder. The easiest way to do this is to have it go with this, because this should be approximately visible and therefore clear-ish. He should do anything else about 5 times as often as he should do this one about 5 times as often as he does any of the others. Now obviously it will take a long time to test this sort of thing statistically, but it looks about right at the moment. So presumably it means that those are added up and then averaged back down, and therefore the numbers actually don't help at all for most people. Which is technically implied from the beginning. There's no way to understand what that means. If you set them all to 100, what would it do? In fact, we can even test this, because we're quite close there. Go on, do your craziness. Everything is now at 100 and just playing normally. My perception is that therefore this would just equalize them all again, and you're just really setting ratios relative to each other. This can in fact be useful, and in our general way of bot creation, we should be able to use this in a way that helps just tell you for this bot set this to this much, and so on. This has a lot more to do with character tactics than anything to do with specials or specific links or any of those things. The harder combos in the game are not the ones you really want to be giving to a bot most of the time. You want things like assists and setups and tricks. So we're not going to end up caring too much about this, and you shouldn't care either. If we do create any bots, we will just tell you what to set various things to, and given that we will be probably making every bot do the same 8 actions with tweaked ratios, it probably would lead to really quick development. Most of what we'd have to be looking for is how to make sure that every character who has particular special things gets to use them. For example, wrong one. Hello, Kakarot. This character has some more interesting things. That would not be the one I was thinking about. Basically, his down special attack actually has some specific uses. Wait, that's actually changeable? Oh lord, why? Fine. You get to see a lot more from him for this reason, actually. Now, we don't have an easy way to make him do his down special a ton, but I did start at least one action with that. So, let's abuse the system of I can really quickly switch these and try to remember which of those that was. It would therefore help if you marked each recording with and did it with a different character, but that's kind of silly. That appears to be something altogether different. Wonder what I was doing. Oh no, there's the quarter circle forward. Good stuff. On its own, perfectly fine. Were you the special? Probably, given where I was in the discussion at the time. No, it does not appear to be. Maybe I overwrote it. Well, in that case, something to record overall if I did overwrite it. But it might have been just I put it in 3 and forgot. Nope, doesn't even be that either. I probably overwrote it. So, let's re-record that one, because you get to see it on the character and see the general interest of it. So we're recording slot 7 now. This is what his down special mash does. And the distance covered by the actual attack is related to which direction you hold. Down back puts it right in front of him, down forward puts it as far away as possible. He always homes in on the opponent for the final part. And he can, in fact, change where it goes. So we could get something out of it by wiggling it back and forward and mashing. Presumably powering that up. So, obviously we have certain uses for this. If you can input the back special properly, you should be able to get deflects as a random thing. But we don't want to do that here. What we want is more of a wiggle on the bottom part and then the back. So, we're going to try for that. Ugh. Maybe we got something good. And that starts at 50, so if I replay it, it should just repeat itself. Okay. If I poke him, he'll probably use a different version, very slightly different. And I could see no reason to not let him go into the last part. But the important part here is not whether or not he does that, but what happens if another character does it. Much less useful overall, but not harmful for the most part. And there's a small chance that if I hit him correctly, he'll throw it directly at me. I think. I'm not sure if I got back. No, I did. I got at the back somewhere in there. But it's not terrible. And if it were terrible, we would just change it to something else. There's the deflect. This one's a little harder to cause a forward throw of it, but eh. Right, I no longer have a heavy there. Obviously recording is a little bit complicated because you don't want to overwrite things and you're using far too many unfamiliar things, but if you struggle through it, you may have something useful at the end. So now we know we have Dragon Rush, Super Dash, Supers, obviously, some quarter circle stuff, some auto combos. The problem now is, wait, what about my assists? Well, there are definitely times you can call assists normally, and there are definitely times when you can call assists as changes. But, fortunately, these things don't always coincide with each other, so... And assist buttons are flatly assist buttons. Leaving you with a fairly easy setup for how exactly to use them. In fact, you could try to stack some quarter circles on there because ugh, did I just overwrite it? I'm pretty sure I did. But we didn't need it that much. So, on to slot 8 because I'm hitting heavy when I should be hitting something else. And we'll put back your down special setup later. So we have this move, and we have this. But if you try to hit them both at the same time, when the assist can't be called, it will do the move. This has various uses, but above all else, it lets us do quarter circles whose only purpose is to call assists and not do moves. Which will then help us with having enough quarter circles for more moves, but not always using them. And backward quarter circle should actually call the assist. So, let's try that for now. If you're in the air, it will still call the assist if you're all the way to forward. And it will do the switch if you're all the way forward and call the assist if you're all the way back. So, we should be able to record those and it just be fine. In fact, if we want to do it perfectly, there should be no point at which we actually hit another button during this. Maybe I over-recorded, so let's double check that. We're looking decent now. But we're only going to know if I put back on one of our others. Maybe I'll use that to remind me what it is. Sure, let's put it at 1 and see what you do. What I would prefer if was that the other one is that 1. Let's try that. So the single medium is working, but the edge shift itself seems a little slow in that he no longer does medium moves off that. So we're going to double check that we're recording in slot 8 and try again. The easy way to do it, obviously, is to try to hit the 2 at the same moment. what I get. This is a lot closer probably, and there we have moves again. Good stuff. And no matter how many times he does the quarter circle forward with the assist, if there's no assist to call, nothing will happen. And as soon as there is an assist to call, he will switch. So let's try recording 7. And do it as quarter circle back. And we can even double tap it, use different assists, all sorts of things. In fact, it's so quick that you might be able to tell whether or not you hit it right by whose assist comes out. But it seems we're quick enough, or nearly quick enough. Depends on if we get the medium when the medium triggers. And we have the medium. Now, putting these all together in a way that actually helps you is probably super difficult, but those are the core principles of it. So, aside from the ruined something somewhere, then we can now use the on and off part of this flip, thank goodness they made this roll over, to check what all of our recordings are. So this is just a quarter circle back. And this is just one medium button. Note that unless you're really good at it, you can't edge shift this to just give you the auto combo. But I believe it's possible, and we can probably test it some other time. This one is our Dragon Rush, with at least some hits. Our Super Dash, with a couple of mediums to get medium style auto combos instead, and some air back stuff and so on. Another quarter circle forward. Could be easily done again with the assist button and add more assists in. The difficulty here is that it stops us from using the assist button in a particular way, given that you'd normally hold them to call in multiple characters. But again, this is probably not something we care about in the bot sense a lot. How to defend against multiple level 1 supers at the same time. Here's our supposed jump cancel, which isn't necessarily useful for jumping in itself, but might help a little bit. And our 2 assists with directions. So, let's be silly and give them all the exact same output, and go for it, Goku. On the other hand, I should probably take away your meter so that this isn't a constant super fest. You can tell I don't use this. Right, this one. What else? We obviously want this to be normal. No input delay required. Sure, let's go. One of these has a far too long pause at the end of it. Oh no, that pause is supposed to be there. Never mind. Looking decent. Of course, it is completely random, but some things in this game, once you've gotten the hit in neutral, you can sometimes somewhat mash random buttons to get some reward. It's not usually a good reward, but it's something. But let's go a little further. You can see the change character now has basically everyone at once. And we should think of a frenetic enough character or team that will really help this out. So let's switch around some enemy characters. We're gonna go with Trunks, who I expect to be useful for this a lot of the time. Where'd you go? There we go. Goku Black for a little bit at least. And either Adult Gohan or Tien. And... Tien has the more useful assist, so we'll use him. Now, obviously your training partners are changed in the simplest way, but note that we no longer have any of the Gokus on our team. We just have a bunch of Goku related recordings. But we can just turn this on, and Trunks seems to be completely fine. We chose these characters because they have a lot of forward movement, a lot of fairly frenetic actions, and they synergize well without a lot of effort. You don't have to actually understand too heavily what's going on. So while we don't yet have something that can actually teach you to play the game, it's most likely going to be some tweak of this. Especially since a lot of what you need to learn about the game or the characters is how to punish or deal with a specific character's version of a universal thing. This alone is functionally enough to be a bot. You don't have to understand too much more about it. And therefore, if we end up releasing just this for at least a little bit, most likely it won't be too terrible. At the moment it's set to do far too much of any given thing, and you can easily do the research and test which of them are happening too much. But for a character whose light auto combo is good, for example, we would change it so that the chances of the light auto combo coming out are a lot higher, and so on. Similarly, we could tweak it so that it's at least possible for you to get thrown out when they grab you with the Dragon Rush, and so on. It'll take a little work, but it isn't ridiculous. And as you can see, Tenshinhan has his similar style of thing. And there's definitely some stuff to deal with in there. If you're familiar with our bot theory, it isn't too hard to make this just work for you. So I'm going to change back my buttons for a little bit so as to not damage any of our precious recordings. And let's set it to L3 because it's the thing I'm least likely to hit by accident ever. Meaning that for now, we don't intend to make any more changes to what you see in terms of inputs. We can definitely come up with better ones, but it would take a lot of looking across all characters to figure out what the best combinations are that won't wreck something for someone else. So we're missing things like down heavy, and probably a lot of little things that you'd find in the Dragon Rush one. But rather than make that too hard to input, let's just start messing with some ratios instead. The first thing we can probably do is recognize that the Dragon Rush one, which I presume is 2, and they don't show you on the screen so you don't know, is less. Note that of course you do have a relatively quick way of checking this by tapping all the others off and verifying it, but we're going to hope that eventually we either record them all with separate characters just for the sake of being able to tell them apart, or memorize what they all are. Anyway, this I'm pretty sure was just a regular medium because I would have used it for the testing. So let's consider this one to be the important one here and lower it to 50. Why it becomes blue, I don't know. Oh, defaults. 51 then, because I like blue better. So our hope here is that we'll see a little bit less of the auto combo style input. But again, it would take forever to actually be sure of that. Do your thing, Tenshinhan. But in terms of reacting to basic stuff, you should have most of it. You could sit here and block until you see Trunks super dash, for example, or call an assist and try to crouch heavy that without having to think about too much else. The battle will go on more or less normally. You could try to learn to tech Dragon Rushes the same way, and realize when you're hitting the wrong thing. Working in things like certain dash jumps and so on will also probably be important. But at this point, it's not so bad because we have at least 3 free slots, and possibly more than that depending on how much we really need those quarter circles to be where they are, rather than just using the assist-based ones for the entire thing and changing the frequencies of other things relative to them. So if for nothing else, you could already use this to test your reactions to super dashes. Mine being terrible. We can also do simple things like trying to make them be able to do their heavy smash into air moves and similar things. The question is how to put all of that together to make the character most capable of doing it. Similarly, you can learn to defend yourself against the overhead style attack, based almost entirely on that. But the main thing we're thinking about being important here is, from this base, you can test out a lot of opposing characters without having to worry about the CPU and see what you get. For example, let's give Cell a shot. Who else would actually behave? Bardock. And let's see what hit does. Will you even do standard things?
Get ready for battle.
Once again, we don't have to be too invested in any given thing they do. We really want to work on countering things that almost all characters can do. Since if you're worried about your opponent's really complex pressure, could you even have recorded it in the first place if you didn't know how it worked? Alright, Sal, let's see what you do with this. This offense does not look as legit as it could, Sal. That, on the other hand, doesn't look terrible. Bardock being Bardock. I'm way better at deflecting than I am at countering things directly. But you know that because of the characters I play. If you mess with certain things and timings, obviously what will happen will be more interesting and stronger, and the more cool things we learn to hide in here, the more that will happen. But this is a decent start. This is not likely to help you if you're too offensive a player yourself, because so far we haven't put in much defense into anything. Nor do we really plan to. But if you just need something that does moves a little bit more randomly, just so you can get used to spamming and other weirdness, this will be sufficient. Once again, noting if you're super interested in this and want to use the sorts of things in it right away, normally we would have the whole release, but this stream is probably enough. It is simply quarter circle forward, one throwaway that I'm not using for anything other than a single medium at the moment. Dragon rush into mashed lights. A quarter circle back somewhere. Super dash with, I think I hit special twice in there, I think. Probably could be where I put the jumps and so on. Similar thinking. Some quarter circle forward and backward with assists, and a jump cancel with medium. And that's about it. If you learn the edge shift method for it, if you're quick enough, everything you see here will automatically be possible and happen. And you can obviously try to do more special things, or wait for us to release something that you can mess with. So let's give some other characters a chance. No, not that one. Let's try with some characters who would have very out of the ordinary attack or defense style. Stuff that should not work with using just this. 18 and Frieza are like this. So let's just actually pick my whole normal team and see what happens, because they are pretty far out of that space. Piccolo, 18, Lord Frieza. And for the sake of it, we will finally change stage. To my other preference. Although we had some better music in here to test out, so let's let it rock. At least I think. No. No. Maybe. I don't know what that is. Let's rock. Of course it does. Why do I always forget these things? Did it remember anything? Nope. 18. Piccolo. And once again, Lord Frieza. Islands. We suggest so far, if you want to associate things with characters so that it's easier to remember, you should generally use a character who you know who you mentally associate with that input. For example, if you had Brawly available, Oh, right, of course. That is a weird way to handle that. There's nothing wrong with the stream, it's just that I happen to choose music that other people might not have bought, so you can't get the recording. You know what would be funny if it was actually playing the music. Either way, fine. We will live with the standard music stylings. And hopefully make our stream visible again.
The outcome of this fight is anybody's guess.
I'm not really concerned about it, it's just a weird way to handle that particular thing. Because what happens if like that music gets picked randomly while you're fighting in somewhere else? Does the stream just die automatically? Our tournament organizer is going to have to really stress about this. Fortunately, even when being semi-random, this group can still do some stuff. Generally, you shouldn't have to change characters or inputs for people. That's what I'm mostly trying to show off right now. Ranges might matter, how you approach them might matter, but the inputs themselves, the bots, is unlikely to matter as much. As you can see. I wonder what happens if they manage to summon Shenron. Had me thinking that was her horse head boot. You can also get rid of at least one thing by changing the jump cancel one so that it doesn't actually do the jump cancel itself, but that it does the timing such that if you held up forward, it would in fact do it. What exactly we do from there is unclear, but you get the idea. Good job, Piccolo. So count on the simplicity and semi-randomness of this to create new things for you. You have the idea. Even with my team who has a lot of not necessarily difficult or weird moves, but some tactics you might not expect, it still functions. You shouldn't be too surprised that it does what it's supposed to do, quote unquote. Whether or not it teaches you anything is a different question. However, one thing it definitely can teach you based on what we've seen so far is dealing with opponent switches and pressure that is based on their assists.
その鬱陶しい口を黙らせて
あんたの力が見たいわ。
究極のセレブはもうここにいるだろう。
One important key here is probably seeing what happens when you do it with light moves. Since light medium should give you EX moves, we might need to fit a light in here somewhere depending on the characters. But again, it's not likely to be too difficult to find some space somewhere. Or a space to just hold the assist button. The input will probably become more and more complex and difficult, but you can probably come up with something that isn't too terrible. For example, we could use two different types of quarter circle forward, one where you hold the assist button from the beginning, and therefore it's not likely to do anything at all while you call the assist, and one where you actually have it normally, which would allow you to get actual assist call more often, given that you'd be holding down. But still make it possible for you to get all sorts of things. For example, probably your level 3 super cancel from the assist. That one I'm willing to try now. Since that is a strict upgrade to what we were already doing and therefore can't be all that bad. So back to button settings and hoping we don't destroy everything. L2. Record training dummy. Okay. So we are going to re-record our slot 1, which we are relatively confident in. And we're going to record it as a Frieza for no particular reason, really. So what we want here is to start the recording and press the assist button at the same time. Hold the assist button and end the recording. Now, did we get it is a different question. But, again, we have the option to quickly switch off basically everything. And the one we leave on is probably one that sort of helps with stuff. Especially since in this case we need the super. So, the important part here is to somehow not manage to overwrite everything while we're doing it. Looks like I went too fast. Which puts us back to Frieza. Hello, Frieza. No, that's too quick. I wonder what happens when it tries to record that then. If it switches the player in the middle of it, what does it record it as, Frieza? It should record it as Frieza. No, wrong way. You can tell it was wrong before because it kept on calling Piccolo, which it shouldn't be doing. Ugh, that's going to drive me crazy. It might be easier to make this sort of recording without actually having the character available. 4 more switches. Totally not what I meant to do either. That was weird, but I think it might be right. See what we got. That is not correct, again. You can see that this is specific, and the way that the inputs work may be a little bit out of the ordinary for you. No. That's interesting. Okay, so now we're actually going to do the test of what that actually thinks it's doing. It seems to be fine. As we mentioned before, we're pretty confident that if you do record and you try to hit the 2 buttons at the same time, that it will treat it as that input. So it's not as if this is too hard to do at the beginning, it's rather that it does not seem that way at first. Sensible, that is. So let's try it this standard, natural way. We're going to hit the 2 buttons at the same time, try to hold one, and move on from there. Closer. Closer by far. At this point we're just worrying about getting a quarter circle forward correct, and that's not too hard when you're actually calm enough. Not quite. It ends a little bit too early. Because unlike the Street Fighter situation where we're more likely to have trouble because we are trying specifically to do something very slightly off a normal rhythm, using a face button means that it really is exactly on your normal rhythm, and therefore kind of hard to actually get wrong. Did I let go of the button? Hopefully not. Nope. This, however, does mean that you might be able to get it to go a little bit slower than you normally need to. And it might seem a little bit easier to record for people who are not familiar with how to record our bots in the first place. That looks about right now. But now it seems like I'm a little too slow, otherwise you should probably be doing a super. Unfortunate, but still not terrifyingly bad. That was cleaner, and there we go. The question important here though is, can it call the other? Now, we don't have a short super motion to do this, so we're going to have to use something other than that one. I believe we put that in here. This might be quarter circle again. We'll see. You can see that the reason why this does not work is because it takes a certain amount of time to get around to the hey, let's hold the assist button part. So as a result of giving both of our main ones problems in that regard, it's become harder to set it up. However, we can still go for this. We're going to give slot 3 a one quick try before we close up the stream to give what we hope is the final demonstration of what is intended to happen here. And of course, now with any luck, that gives us a super with a mashed light in it. Now what we're hoping for is that at some point Frieza will actually... Oh wait, I better should give him more meter for this. Our hope is that at some point Frieza will actually do this and call the assist super. That's right side. Sure. Do your thing, Piccolo. Not that one. But here we are. Why is that one on? We can probably do without it. So flip. And that basically concludes what we're probably going to be trying to do. What we apparently cannot do easily, at least, is make sure that they are the right directions, but therefore we just suggest if you are doing a quarter circle forward with the right assist button held, you do the quarter circle back with the right assist button tapped, and it will somewhat solve your problems, probably. The rest is a statistical analysis of which types of moves need the assist called first, i.e. quarter circle back moves as a generality, or tend to need the assist called toward the end, and a bunch of other little things. Note, of course, that if you want to do this properly and call the assist each time, you have to time it even more strictly. But since we do need at least one of them to actually be the switch call, you may care. So, let's run through some more characters and close up our stream. Let's see what it has to say if we play some of the teams we know. How much of what we've seen other players in our group use can be reproduced or at least look like it's supposed to be working based on just this weirdness. Alright, that was it. I keep on forgetting that that's how I'm supposed to read that. Here we go. How do I get to Goku? I wouldn't want Goku even if I had the choice. Let's see what Rune Siren, i.e. Kanzaki Dynasty's team, has to say for itself. Given this same input style. One other thing you could do with this that would be super weird, but possibly useful, is just test what the synergy between characters is without actually having to play them. Maybe they'll create new randomness for you. Let's give you all a little more meter so we can see some stuff. Let's give you 1 so that maybe you can build up on your own. I think that'll probably be fine. Since we don't really care about them being able to cancel into level 3s. Let's go. You can see already there's at least one character who is affected by this in a weirder way, given that his moves and combos don't work quite the same. But, you never know. Might get some. I'll try to actually get to the middle of the screen so that it isn't just corner carry. But you could use it to test corner pressure too if you wanted. That has much worse range than I thought it did. And just super dash at you like a crazy person for a bit. Or not, because that, of course, forgot to change the buttons. Fine. Fortunately, that was not one of the ones we needed a lot of. Since there's no way to apparently go back out without having that problem recur. What was I even on? Slot 3? Slot 3 was the... Oh, never mind, I can redo that one. That's not how that's done. And now, let's be sensible and change the button so that that doesn't happen anymore. And so I can actually put something into fighting back. Everything else look fine. Sparking's in the wrong place, but probably don't care right now. Okay, wait, no, I do care right now. Let's move around a little bit. Mostly I tend to just super dash at him like a nut and see what he does. There's not much defense in here, so I don't expect much to happen. And of course, Boo decides to fly around the screen instead of actually doing anything else. But you can definitely see certain characters are going to require you to turn off certain inputs, or tweak them if they're easy to replace, at the beginning of your training session with them. We're hoping to not have too many characters that have to do the replacement part, and stick mostly to turn this on and turn this off. So let's block Gohan for a little bit. As usual, they're somewhat effective. Hampered a little bit by the difficulty that Boo has with the current set of inputs, I'm sure we could probably come up with something for him. Or change some ratios so that it works for him. Whether or not we could change the ratio so it works for the whole team at once is a different question. But, as always, well, relatively always, let's have our main team close it out. I've forgotten what color this is. Rabbit, let me know what color this is. Just for the sake of having them on stream with the correct colors. I think it's 5. Oh, 6. Find it. Oop. Alright guys, show us something spectacular. And of course, space. And the best theme song in the game. So we're going out relaxing with some smooth jazz. Next week we expect to be back to normal in terms of full lobbies. We assume that someone will have dealt with it by then. And that their server infrastructure would have been upgraded and not all been devoted to the Switch or something. Tomorrow, Sagat bot, so even more bot content. Except that will be just guidance and be full. Of course that's the first thing Trunks does, because he's Trunks, why not? Not the speed we expect, but speed is a different matter of tweaking inputs. So let's give you all a little more meter to mess with. Rock it all the way to 4. Didn't I give you all? Didn't I give you all auto recover of some kind? Oh, it must be I changed the wrong side. Yes. How did they end up on that side? Whatever. Do your thing. Comes when you don't pay enough attention. We will of course therefore do what we can to refine this to the point where you can do something useful with it. Other than watch cool combos happen and hope that you learn the right things to defend against. But overall, with that, we're going to bring our stream to a close. And as I said, join us tomorrow for Sagatbot. On Monday for more mishmashing battle lounges in Street Fighter 5. On Tuesday for Guilty Gear Tuesday Train. And next week, Wednesday, possibly taking another look at this if we've gotten any further. But we're not really sure exactly what they will be. By that time, we might have something for G-Bot for you to look at in someone's sandbag casuals. Hopefully next week, Thursday, we'll be back with Kame House. But if somehow it hasn't been fixed by then, you can look forward to a more refined version of all this. Hopefully with a better rhythm. This has been Rillian with Team 2MK. Good night, everyone.